It was supposed to be a birthday surprise. My son, Josh, was turning 18, and I wanted to mark the milestone with something meaningful. A used car he could call his own. I wasn't rich, but I'd saved up around $3,500 and figured that was enough for something reliable and modest. I browsed all the big-name sites, Cars.com, AutoTrader, eBay Motors, but everything decent was far above my price range. Then I found Craigslist. There it was, a 2003 Toyota Camry with only 67,000 miles, listed for $3,500. No accidents, clean title, great condition. The listing was bare bones, no dealer photos or lengthy specs, just a few words and 3 simple pictures. A clean-looking silver Camry parked in front of a small house. The seller's name was Rick, and he lived just outside Flagstaff, Arizona, only about a 25-minute drive from where I lived in Sedona. He sounded normal on the phone, maybe a little older, friendly enough. He insisted there were absolutely no issues, and he'd be happy to show it to me that Saturday. I withdrew the cash, just in case I could close the deal that day, and set off early to be there on time. His place was down a dirt road, isolated, but not completely rural. There were neighbors, just far enough that no one could really hear anything out of the ordinary. I arrived 15 minutes early and parked in front of a small, run-down-looking house with an open garage. But there was no Camry. Only an old rusted pickup sat on the gravel driveway, and the garage was cluttered with what looked like decades worth of car parts, fenders, mufflers, doors, bumpers stacked like forgotten trophies of some mechanical graveyard. I walked to the front door. No doorbell. Just a missing button and exposed wires. So I knocked, and knocked again, and again, for 5 whole minutes. Finally, I called Rick. The line connected. I heard a ringtone, but not from my phone. It was coming from inside the house. That's when my gut twisted. I knew I had the right place, but something felt off. The house had this eerie stillness, like it hadn't been touched in years. I peered into a side window, pressing my forehead gently against the glass. The interior was dim, but I could just make out a formal dining room set, ornate, old-fashioned, like something from a grandparent's house that hadn't been updated since the 70s. Then I saw him, or it, standing at the back door, facing the woods, motionless. It looked like a man, maybe Rick, but the stillness was wrong. It was too still. I tapped on the window. No reaction. Curiosity, and maybe a sliver of concern got the better of me. I walked around the house to the backyard. No fence, no gate, just dry grass and pine needles under my boots. As I approached the figure from behind, heart pounding, I saw the truth. It wasn't Rick. It wasn't anyone. It was a taxidermied human figure, posed like a mannequin, facing the trees. I stumbled backward, heart racing, nearly dropping the envelope of cash in my hand. I turned to bolt back toward my car, but paused just for a second to look back at the house. The window I had looked through earlier, the blinds were now shut, except for 2 small creases, just enough for someone to peek out from inside. And someone was. 2 eyes, dark, hollow, locked onto mine. I didn't think. I just ran. I floored it all the way back to Sedona, sweating, shaking, constantly checking the rearview mirror like someone might be tailing me. I couldn't make sense of what I'd seen. There was no Camry, no sign of any recent automotive activity. Just a property filled with spare car parts and a human-shaped display no one could explain. Later that night, as I sat on the couch in silence, I kept wondering, what would have happened if I'd arrived right on time? What if the garage door had been closed? What if I'd gone around to the backyard just a few minutes later? What if I'd stepped inside? I didn't call the police. I couldn't even bring myself to report the listing. It vanished from Craigslist the next day anyway. But the thought still haunts me. Maybe that car was never for sale at all. Maybe someone sick had built that trap for the kind of guy I was. A father, showing up alone, with cash in hand and a trusting smile. I've never liked talking about this story, not even in therapy. I've only ever told it to 2 people, my husband and my best friend from grad school. And now, you. I was 7 years old when it happened. My mom and I lived alone in a small rental house on the edge of Bozeman, Montana. She was a single parent working 2 jobs, and even then, we barely scraped by. Still, she made sure I always felt loved and safe. We didn't have much, but we had each other. That night was like any other. The air smelled like pine. and it had rained earlier, so the windows were cracked just enough to let in the cool night breeze. I remember lying in bed under my unicorn blanket, listening to the wind rustling through the trees. I woke up around 2 a.m., unsure of what stirred me. Maybe a dream, maybe the cold, maybe something else. I turned over and rubbed my eyes, and that's when I saw her, my mom, standing at the foot of my bed, smiling gently. She raised a hand and gave me a playful wave, like she always did when she was being silly. She whispered, "Go back to sleep, honey." Then she slowly walked over to my closet, opened the door just a crack, slipped inside, and pulled it closed, but not all the way. The door stopped just short, leaving a narrow sliver of space. From that gap, I could see one eye, just one, peeking through, watching me. I remember holding my breath. I didn't move. I just stared back at that single eye. It didn't blink. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep or passed out. I don't know. But the next morning, I woke up still in bed, the closet door shut completely. The sunlight made everything feel less threatening. While eating my cereal, I casually asked, "Mom, why were you hiding in my closet last night?" She froze, like genuinely froze, milk jug still in her hand, halfway out of the fridge. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. I repeated the story, how she had waved to me and gone into the closet. She slowly shook her head. "Honey, I never got up last night. I didn't come into your room." Her face changed, at first confused, then worried. She knelt beside me, held my hands, and tried to reassure me. Maybe it was a dream, just a silly dream, okay? I wanted to believe that. I really did. But deep down, I knew what I saw. The way that eye stared at me through the crack, it was too vivid, too cold, too real. Years later, when I was packing up old boxes from my childhood home before moving away for college, I found something odd. An old drawing, one I had made when I was about 7. It showed a little girl sleeping in bed with a tall woman waving at her, and behind the girl's closet door, an eye, just like I remembered. I'm 34 now. I'm a licensed child psychologist working with kids who've experienced trauma. And sometimes when one of them says they see something at night, something no one else believes, I pause. I look them in the eye and say softly, "I believe you." Because what if it wasn't a dream? What if that night in Bozeman, something else, something not my mom, slipped into my room? And what if, even now, it's still watching? It was the kind of storm you don't forget. I was 14, spending the weekend at my uncle's ranch in Sandpoint, Idaho, while my parents finished moving into a new house. It wasn't our first time staying with Uncle Frank, but I never really liked being there. The ranch was remote, about 20 minutes from town, surrounded by thick trees and fields that disappeared into the horizon. The house itself had character: aged wood, creaky floors, windows that didn't quite shut all the way, but it always felt off. Maybe it was Frank himself. A military vet, built like a lumberjack, but with a haunted look in his eyes. He didn't talk much unless it was about hunting, weather, or how much the government was hiding from the rest of us. It was a Saturday night, and a thunderstorm was roaring through the mountains. I was alone in the guest room, watching a movie, the kind of background noise that makes the thunder seem a little less scary. Rain pounded the window like it was angry, and every minute or so the whole world would flash white. Then the thunder would crash so fast afterward you could feel it in your chest. It was around midnight when I first heard it. Clang, a sharp metallic sound, not like thunder, not like wind. I muted the movie. Nothing. 20 seconds later, clang. This time I was sure it didn't come from inside the house. It had a rhythm to it, like someone hitting metal with force. I walked over to the window and looked out, but between the sheets of rain and my own reflection in the glass, I couldn't see much. Still, something about it made the hairs on my arms stand straight up. Then it happened again. Clang. Closer now. I decided to do something I knew Frank would probably scold me for. Open the window. The second I slid it up, the storm forced cold wind and water into the room. I stuck my head out, looked to the left, and then lightning lit up the entire property. What I saw in that brief, terrifying second still visits me in dreams. Someone, a figure dressed in black, soaking wet, crouched low by the basement door, with one arm raised, was slamming something heavy into the padlock. I ducked back inside and slammed the window shut. My heart was in my throat. I didn't want to believe what I saw. Maybe it was a hallucination, just a trick of the light. Clang. I sat back down on the bed, back against the wall, staring at the window like it might break at any moment. Then nothing. No more clangs. Just thunder. Lightning. And then, finally, silence. After a while, I convinced myself it was safe to get Frank. I didn't want to. It felt childish, but I couldn't handle this alone. I turned toward the door to go wake him, and froze. There was someone standing at the window. A pale face, blurred by raindrops, staring in at me. No expression, just watching. I screamed so loud my throat burned. Frank burst in within seconds, holding a hunting rifle, barefoot and half asleep but ready to shoot if needed. I told him someone was outside, trying to break into the basement. He didn't question me. He ran out into the storm, rifle raised, yelling like a man possessed. I watched from the window, but he found no one. Just rain and mud and the weight of whatever had almost happened. The next morning, we inspected the basement door. The lock was nearly destroyed. Just a few more strikes and it would have popped clean off. There were dents in the metal, heavy ones, and something that looked like the corner of a crowbar still lying in the dirt. Frank just nodded. "You did good, kid. Real good." That afternoon, my parents came and picked me up. We didn't really talk about it after that. Frank never mentioned it again. But sometimes when I call him on the phone, he'll end the call with, "Keep your window locked, Eli." And I always do. Some people unwind at bars. Others go to the gym. For me, it's always been the movies. There's something soothing about sitting in a dark theater with a big bucket of popcorn, no distractions, and a story unfolding just for you. I worked strange hours as a freelance designer in Portland, Oregon, so weeknight movies became my thing. Less noise, fewer people, more peace. It was a stormy Wednesday night in October 2017 when I decided to catch a late showing of a low-budget indie thriller. Not a big-name film, something quiet. I like those the best. I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot at 9:15 p.m. Only 3 other cars sat in the rain-soaked spaces. The lobby was quiet. The teenager at the counter barely looked up as I handed over my digital ticket. I grabbed my usual snacks, nodded politely, and stepped into Theater 4. No one. Perfect. I picked my favorite spot, dead center, upper row, kicked my feet up on the chair in front of me, and exhaled. 20 minutes into the film, during a scene set in a pitch-black hallway, I noticed something strange in the row ahead. A head. Not seated, not watching the screen. Just peeking. The top half of a pale face slowly rose behind one of the seats a few rows down. The screen was still dark, so I couldn't make out much, just the silhouette of someone not facing the movie. The direction of their body, the stillness. It didn't make sense. I leaned forward slightly. Maybe they were looking for a seat? Dropped something? Then the scene shifted. The movie got brighter, and so did the theater. And I saw them, a gaunt, waxy face. Eyes wide, motionless, messy, wiry hair sticking out in every direction. It wasn't just pale, it was gray, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. They were looking at me. Not the screen, me. My breath caught in my chest. I thought about saying something, but I'm not that kind of person. I'm quiet. I don't like confrontation, even when it's needed. So I did nothing. The screen dimmed again, and just like that, they sank down out of view. Gone. But I couldn't focus anymore. The movie faded into background noise. All I could think about was whether they were still there. Minutes passed. Then they popped up again. Closer. Now only 3 rows ahead. I yelped. Actually yelped, like someone poked me with a needle. My popcorn spilled everywhere. I wasn't imagining this. Their eyes were locked open. Still. Soulless. I grabbed my phone for light, but quickly realized I didn't want to shine it on them. I didn't want to see more. I just wanted out. As I stood to leave, I had to walk past the row where the person was crouched. I glanced sideways, bracing myself for whatever I'd see, and what I saw didn't feel real. They weren't sitting, they were lying on the floor, and they were holding something. At first, I thought it was a prop, some dumb Halloween gag, a mannequin. But then I saw what it really was, a human head, severed, mounted on a stick like a trophy, its eyes still open, its mouth partially agape. I ran. I didn't scream, I just ran. Straight through the back exit, into the rain-soaked parking lot, fumbling with my keys, heart thundering in my chest. I didn't stop until I was in my car, doors locked, driving home like a fugitive from some invisible nightmare. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched online for any recent missing persons in the area, and I found one. A 17-year-old boy, missing for weeks. His name was Daniel Watkins. I studied the photo carefully. Same dark, wavy hair, same nose, same eyes. I told myself I was imagining the match, that it couldn't be real, but it felt real. The next day, I called the theater, told them what I saw, asked if they had cameras in Theater 4. They took my number. They never called back, and I never went back there again. When you're young and broke, you'll take whatever housing deal you can find, even if it comes with strange neighbors, creaky floors, and a sense of unease you can't quite shake. That was me and my buddy, Marcus, when we found a cheap rental in an older part of Northville, Michigan. We'd been friends since we were kids, and we were both working construction jobs during the day, so we figured it'd be fun to room together for a while. The house was small, old, but decent. What caught us off guard wasn't the inside, it was what was across the street. A rundown, boarded-up 2-story house, tucked behind overgrown bushes and surrounded by a rusted metal fence. On our second day there, we noticed faded graffiti near one of the windows. It said just one word, "Stay." The first time I saw the upstairs window, I laughed nervously and said, "Dude, that house gives me horror movie vibes." Marcus agreed, but we brushed it off, until we saw the face. It was late, probably 10:30 p.m., and we were sitting on the front stoop having a smoke, just talking about work and bills and girls we'd never actually ask out. I glanced across the street out of habit, then froze. In the window, the upstairs window of the abandoned house, was a pale face watching us. I stood up, dropped my cigarette without thinking, and pointed. "You see that? Someone's up there." Marcus turned to look, but by then, the face had vanished. I explained what I saw. Sunken eyes, ghostly skin, unmoving expression. Marcus believed me. Maybe because we'd always had each other's backs since we were 10. Maybe because that house really did feel wrong. We crossed the street and knocked on the door of our neighbor on the right, a strange older man with long gray hair and a beard like a wizard who never retired. His name was Marvin, and he spoke like someone halfway between stoned and spiritually enlightened. He told us, "That house has been empty since I moved here. No one's lived there in over a decade." We asked if he'd ever seen lights, movement, anything. He just smiled and said, "Sometimes stillness is louder than noise, you know?" That didn't help. Later that night, we dared each other to go inside. Marcus had brought his old katana from his anime-obsessed phase in high school. We figured if we had a flashlight and a sword, we'd be safe, right? We snuck around back and found the rear door loosely boarded up. A few pulls and a little kick, and we were inside. The air was stale, thick, like it hadn't moved in years. The house was covered in dust, but surprisingly intact. No signs of vandalism or decay. Almost preserved. It was quiet. We explored the first floor. Tiny kitchen, faded couch, old radio on a shelf that still worked if you turned the knob just right. But nothing out of the ordinary. Then we climbed the stairs. About halfway up, Marcus did something stupid. He yelled, "Anybody up there?" I shoved him. "What the hell is wrong with you?" But before either of us could say anything else, we heard it. Stomping. Fast. Heavy. Someone or something was charging toward the top of the stairs from the hallway above. My blood turned ice cold. Marcus grabbed my arm with one hand and held the katana with the other. "We're out. Now." We bolted. Down the stairs. Out the back. Over the fence. When we looked back toward Marvin's house, he was just standing at his window, watching us, expressionless. We packed the next day, told the landlord we had to leave for job-related reasons. The truth was simpler. We didn't want to be there the next night. We never found out who or what was in that house. But sometimes, when I think back to that moment on the stairs, I wonder, what if we hadn't run? What if we'd made it to the top? What would we have found staring back? It was supposed to be a simple backyard birthday party. Nothing extravagant, just family, some close friends, a few tables, balloons, snacks, and the kind of laughter that floats up with summer air. My son, Caleb, was turning 12. We live in rural New Jersey, in a home nestled at the edge of a dense forest. Our backyard stretches far, with tall trees bordering two sides and a shed sitting near the rear fence. For years, those woods had been our backdrop. Calm, quiet, even beautiful. Until that night. The party started around 4 p.m. The sun was warm, the grill was fired up, and Caleb was surrounded by a pack of boys from school, already planning games, daring each other to eat wasabi chips, and tossing water balloons at their own feet just to get a laugh. As dusk settled in, most of the guests left. Only close family remained: my wife, my brother Dom, his kids, a couple of neighbors. The mosquitoes were starting to show up, so I told Dom I'd grab the tiki torches from the shed. I crossed the yard, barefoot on wet grass, the shed creaking as I opened it. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, not mine, from inside the woods. I stopped, stared into the trees, but it was too dark to see anything beyond the first row of trunks. The sound stopped as soon as I did. A squirrel? A deer? Maybe. I shook it off, found the fuel canister, and headed back to set up the torches. Their flickering flames cast a cozy golden glow around the patio. The kids were now begging to play hide and seek in the woods. At first, we said no, but they pleaded. Just the edge of the trees, my wife finally said. Nowhere deep. They cheered and darted toward the forest line. We went back to the table, sipped wine, talked about nothing in particular. Laughter echoed from the trees, high-pitched, innocent, full of life. Until it wasn't. Until it turned to screaming. Panicked, terrified. One by one, the kids burst out of the woods, gasping for breath, tears in their eyes. "There's something in there," one yelled. "It's watching us," another cried. My heart sank. Dom and I exchanged a look, grabbed our flashlights, and sprinted into the forest. At first, it was just dark, humid, quiet. But as we moved deeper, we began to feel it, that weight in the air, that sense of being watched. Crickets chirped, leaves crackled underfoot. Then a sound, moaning, low, guttural, twisted, somewhere between a growl and a cry. It didn't sound like an animal, but it didn't sound fully human either. Dom stopped, held up a hand. We listened. The moaning grew louder, closer. Silence. That was worse. We swept our lights across the trees. Nothing. Until, behind a thick trunk about 30 feet ahead, movement. A dark shape shifting slightly, as if crouching. Dom took a cautious step forward. "Hey, you all right?" What answered wasn't a voice. It was a scream. Not just any scream. It was raw, high-pitched, and bone-chilling, like something being torn apart. Not angry, not scared. Just wrong. We ran. Back through the brush, stumbling, breath burning in our lungs. We yelled for everyone to get inside. My wife herded the kids in. Dom slammed the sliding glass door shut behind us and locked it. Everyone stood there, silent, listening. But there was nothing. No more sounds, no more screams. Just the forest, still and dark. We called the sheriff's department. They came, walked the woods with flashlights and rifles, but found nothing. "Probably a fox," one deputy said. Another muttered, "Or maybe a bobcat." But Dom and I knew what we heard. And it wasn't a fox. It's been 3 years since that night. Caleb's older now, and we've long since banned nighttime games near the woods. But sometimes when I'm standing at the edge of our yard, I swear I hear it again. That low, broken moan. Waiting. Watching. Each of these 6 stories reminds us how quickly the ordinary can turn terrifying. Whether it was James facing a life-threatening trap while trying to buy a car, Rachel reliving a childhood fear that never fully left her, or Caleb's father confronting something in the woods that defied explanation, each person found themselves pushed to the edge of what they thought they could handle. But they didn't break. They chose instinct, courage, and sometimes survival through stillness. The real horror wasn't just what lurked outside, but what it revealed inside each of them. Fear, resilience, and the strength to walk away from darkness. The world can be unpredictable, but your instincts are powerful. Trust them. In life, just like in these stories, danger doesn't always knock. It waits in silence. Learn to listen to that voice inside you. It just might save your life. If these stories gave you chills, insight, or inspiration, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Your support keeps this content alive and fuels the next spine-tingling, thought-provoking story. Let's face the darkness together.